yeah, I mean, competition, but then there's also a lot of owners of coffee shops, of roasteries can get tied to their ego
Mhm.
or can use their coffee as a way to boost their ego.
This episode is proudly brought to you by Mapper Forward's workshop. It's time to become a coffee consultant. Learn how to diversify your revenue streams and create freedom from your day job while saying goodbye to that alarm clock forever by becoming a consultant within the coffee industry or directly to consumers who have shifted towards home brewing and home roasting. Protect your income from challenging times in the coffee value chain by taking this course today. Go to mapperforward.coffee/workshops or click the link in the show notes for details. Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and this is episode 1 of a brand new series where we are talking about my absolute fucking favorite thing to talk about on the podcast. And joining me is the brilliant Kat Melheim. Kat, welcome to the podcast for the first time.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
I started watching you about 7 years ago when you started with the zine, and I was super impressed by what you were doing then. And I am crazy, ridiculously impressed with what you're doing now. You are perhaps, in my mind, the best coffee educator on the planet.
Thank you very much.
You're
That's a
welcome.
lot.
Well deserved, I promise you. The reason I say that is because not only do I learn from you, but I feel like you're the first educator who doesn't make people feel stupid for not knowing the simple things. And that is an achievement unto itself. So congratulations on all your success. For anyone who doesn't know, Kat is Roaster Cat on Instagram. And why don't you give people a quick rundown of what you do and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, again, thank you so much for
My
having me
pleasure.
up for that high praise. I'm like blushing over here. Um, yeah, so I am Roaster Cat on Instagram. I started this account a number of years ago as Roaster's apprentice. And literally the idea behind it was to show what I was learning as I was learning it as a new coffee roaster, because I mean, it was and still is difficult to find information about coffee roasting.
Mm,
And in a lot of places, if you're not in the rooms, if you're not in the roasteries, if you're not in the places where things are talked about or taught, you don't really have much access to
mm.
that information. And I think that that's kind of silly. I think everyone should be able to learn what they want to learn. And so, yeah, I started this Instagram account a while ago. I changed the name to Roaster Cat, I think maybe 2 years ago now, partially because apprentice is a very difficult word to spell, especially.
Word.
Yeah,
Same as entrepreneur. I hate
yeah,
being called that just because I have to spell it.
yeah, yeah, for sure. So I changed it to Roaster Cat to be more simple, and also because like as I want my content and the things that I create to be like accessible and easily searchable. I wanted, apprentice is hard to spell for anyone who English is their first language, but for
Right.
anyone who English is not their first language, and there's very little education in the roasting space that's not in English.
Mm.
Most of my stuff is in English, but yeah, I wanted to make it easier to find for folks who maybe aren't as familiar with English as well. So yeah, I changed it to Roaster Cat 2 years ago, which is when I was starting to work at Black and White Coffee Roasters, where I currently work still. Um, because I was in a new roastery, a new space, I was seeing new equipment, new coffees, and I wanted to continue to share the things that I was learning. So yeah, I do that. I also have, as you mentioned, Coffee People Zine, which is my publication. It's very different than the Roaster Cat
Mm.
side of things. It's kind of like I feel like I have a creative, artsy pursuit and a more professional pursuit. So Coffee People Zine is a publication that's all art and poetry and photography by people who work in and around the coffee industry worldwide at this point. So folks send me their artwork and I publish it into a little book. I have a for folks who are actually watching. This is the most recent issue. It's just a little
It's
book.
awesome.
Yeah. So, and yeah, I started that 7 years ago. Yeah, when I think met you for the first time
Mm.
at Scott Rowe's masterclass,
Hmm.
something at Expo. And it's grown a lot since then. It used to be like 40 pages. Now it's 140 pages. And it grew from just being artwork by my friends to now being people all around the world send me their artwork. Yeah, those are the things that I do kind of in my passion projects, free time. And then, as I mentioned, I work for Black and White Coffee Roasters.
Hmm.
I started with them as a production roaster and have since transitioned to um, working on their social media and their marketing team. So I run their cafe Instagram account. I help contribute to like the website. I have gone on an origin trip with them to take photos and video, and yeah, that's
That's
mostly
cat.
what I
That's
do. Yeah.
cat. So the reason I wanted to have a chat with you is because I not only am I impressed by all the education stuff that you do, but you as a human strike me as somebody who genuinely cares about the transference of education and information. You are not a gatekeeper
Hmm.
and you use your platform. You understand the necessity to build a platform so that you can reach your end goal, which is educating people and empowering people.
Hmm.
And to me, that is the complete opposite of what a lot of people are doing when they get, these positions in coffee. So
Hmm.
we're going to talk in this series about the ego in coffee. And the first question that we're going to start in this episode is we're going to address like, where is the ego in coffee? Because it's not at Roast a Cat. You can't say that. I can say that. But we both know that it exists. So in your opinion, where is the ego in coffee?
The ego in coffee exists everywhere.
Word.
It runs everywhere. I mean, yeah, I think it's it's difficult because people are hard. People can be hard to deal with anywhere and
Mm,
everywhere, and I feel like where coffee is no exception. Um, People get really tied to their own success. They get really tied to their own, yeah, ego. And I think, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is competition, because I mean, it's people who are doing, people who are putting themselves on stage. And I think you have to have a certain level of ego in order to do that. Though I also don't want to bash all competitors. I don't think
mm,
everyone does competition just for an ego boost. I think there are a lot of competitors who are working towards other goals. Um, but yeah, I mean, competition, but then there's also a lot of owners of coffee shops, of roasteries can get tied to their ego
hmm.
or can use their coffee as a way to boost their ego. Um, I mean, it's it can be everywhere.
Yeah. It's one of those things that it feels for me like a trap that I can see is a difficult tightrope to navigate, right? You've got to market yourself
Yeah.
if you want to be separated from the crowd and find the kind of success that you want. And then because I've always been fascinated about this idea about what does it mean to be one of the cool kids. I've been
Oh yeah.
confounded by it since I was a child. Why? Trying to understand why people want that.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was in the big kind of, let's say 15 years ago in coffee,
Mhm.
when the intelligentsia crowd were going for coffee competitions
Mhm.
and they didn't just get a coach, they got a publicist and a stylist as well.
Wow. I didn't know that was before my
That's before your
coffee.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
And
yeah.
And that is what we're talking about when we're talking about the ego in competition.
Right, right.
Right? Like, I remember asking them, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
And I was never okay with the answer that came from that.
What did they say? Are you gonna can you share?
And no, because they're listening to the
Fair, fair,
podcast
fair.
and that's their but just know that it was all steeped in ego, right? None of it was about, so on stage people were talking about the producer this and the producer that and blah 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 blah, and we want to help the producer, etc etc etc, and then it comes down to needing a stylist for what the fuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for me, this is my big problem, is like you start to get like you use an excuse to justify an action, and then you start getting swept into this thing, whether it's to sell coffee tools, whether it's to win barista competitions, whether it's to get Insta famous, whatever it is that you're doing. And folks, I can already hear you saying, look at these two ladies that are sitting here on this podcast. Both of them have a platform. Both of them are being known and they're talking about ego.
Fair, fair.
Fair, completely fair. But we both use our platforms to educate people. We both use our platforms to talk about the shit that most people don't want to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're not using it to, like, if I didn't have to be, if nobody had to know this face or know my name or anything like that, I'd be completely cool with it. Mm-hmm. This is not about that. This is about, we have some legitimate fucking problems in coffee and nobody knows how to solve them. None of us know how to solve them.
Right. Well, yeah, and it gets dicey because there is, the algorithm wants a face on the screen, and also people can relate to somebody who's talking to them more than they can relate to just a voiceover and panoramic shots. So it can be really hard. And I think also where one person sees ego, another person could see dedication, or where someone from the outside even sees ego, the person themselves might not be experiencing it that way, and vice versa. So it gets really dicey because we can't know what another person's experience of their ego is. But there are outward signs, I suppose, at times. And I think it also comes back to how someone uses their platform, how someone uses their voice. But there are so many different goals that you can be striving for with, I don't know, popularity or reach or follower count or success in competition or success in business. And then you also, that also gets into like, where's the difference between like ego itself and, I don't know, like striving for financial success.
Right.
So I don't know. There's a lot of, it's hard to parse it all out. And I suppose people's, at the end of the day, it's like, where are people's track records going, I guess?
But there's a line, right? Like, go on.
Yeah, I think there is a line, but it's hard to specifically say where that is in every instance.
Right. And going back to the example of the coffee competition, the stylist and the publicist very clearly stepped over the line, right?
For sure.
When a coffee producer, we recently had Sarah Yoga from Ethiopia on the podcast. Fantastic human, really articulate, really brilliant woman. And she was telling me about how amazing coffee competition is for the youth in Ethiopia.
Yeah, for sure.
It gives them something to strive for. It gives them a focus in their profession. It gives them a sense of pride. Mm-hmm. And then I turn around and say within me, who the fuck do you think you are to talk shit about competition? That's me having the ego then, right? Like that's
Yeah.
me thinking that I know better and all competition is shit. When in fact, in this country, it gives the youth a focus. It gives them hope for their future, especially as the community is establishing coffee shops that then employs these youth and it gives them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think similarly about like a local latte art competition.
Don't get me
There
started.
I mean, yeah, there are a range of competitions. And honestly, one of the reasons I started Coffee People Zine was because I was living in Denver at the time, coffee competitions, and it was the same three people winning
Yeah.
over and over and over again. And I was like, these are the only three people we respect in this industry, in our local scene. But like, is it because they can pour squiggly lines in like of milk in coffee? Like that's what about everybody else who does other art forms that like
Yeah.
might be just as impressive, if not more so.
Right.
Um, so, I have that kind of background perspective, but there are, I think there are a big chunk of people in the middle of a lot of competitions, and I've been to other latte art competitions where people feel included. They feel like
Mm.
they are building a sense of like local community of camaraderie, and so it's definitely not an all or nothing thing. That's really interesting about the Ethiopian thing. I've heard similar things from folks in producing countries that I've
Mm.
visited as well, where yeah, they're like the competitions are super important for us, and yeah, you can't write them all off. I think maybe also then there's a level of like the different tiers of competitors or different tiers of
Mm.
competition in general. Um, because some people, and I mean, I've even heard from competitors in the US who have really working towards competing, has honed their skills, has given them, time and a specific goal to sit down and learn something that they might not otherwise have like delved so deep into.
Mm.
Um, I mean, I've done the like roasting competition a couple of times, and the first time I did it was my most successful time, and I was a super new roaster. I think I had been roasting for like 6 months when I did my first competition, and I learned so much in the month and a half leading up to that competition that I wouldn't have necessarily like dedicated myself to learning or wouldn't
Mm.
have had a specific goal to reach. And so I might not have like learned that much in that concentrated time. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard.
Here's my thing about that. I think it's so wonderful that people who compete, they're learning how to do a hard thing, right?
Yes, yes, yes. I see where you're going.
Yeah. They're learning how to do a hard thing. Same thing when you do a degree. It doesn't really matter what you do the degree in,
Yeah.
but you're learning discipline.
Yeah,
Then
for
when you
sure.
get to the second time, what I start to think about is who benefits from this?
Yeah.
Who benefits from you competing? Who benefits from you continuing to go on? Because
Yeah.
it's a diminishing return every time you compete.
Yes, absolutely. For
And the
sure.
people who need you to compete is not really you. It's your ego and it's the equipment manufacturers and the sponsors of your competitions.
Yeah. Yeah.
They hijack your dopamine receptor
Mm-hmm.
by getting you to feel some FOMO if you're not there. And then everyone I speak to about how they feel after a competition,
Yeah.
they say, it's fantastic for community. And I say, how do you feel after you lose? And they're like, I feel terrible. I feel shit. And then everyone gangs up on the winner. Like,
Yeah.
I think it's fantastic that we have these pursuits and endeavors that force us to do hard things.
Yeah.
But then go learn how to open a business. Or
Yeah.
then go and do something different that isn't going to hijack your dopamine receptor and really fuck with you. Because
Yeah.
people can't get off the competition loop after that. They feel empty.
Right. Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's a really good point, I think. And makes me think of like, okay, competition exists. And also what other things
Yep.
can we build to put our time, energy, attention towards will get, that will garner the same or even like different but equitable, perhaps even more impactful results. So
Mhm.
it's not like, and that's also, again, with my Coffee People zine, I started that not because I was like, all latte art competitions should go away, but I was like, I want to build something else that also exists in this space that can recognize, celebrate,
Mm.
and showcase people that like that maybe the latte art competitions don't do, or they do for these certain people, these couple people who always win. But I want to build something parallel in the industry that can achieve the same goal and even more so.
Mm.
So yeah, like what can we do as an industry to create more platforms, more spaces, more events, more community building opportunities that can achieve the same outcomes of dedicated dedicated study of a certain topic, or trial and error, because that's another thing that happens in competition is
Mm.
trying things, see what works, see what doesn't, building that community and relationships with other people who care about the same things that you do. Yeah, what other thing can we make, what other platforms can we build that will achieve those outcomes without it needing to be a competition where only one person wins each year, and then they're at risk whether or not they got into it for ego. Then if you win, you're at risk for having a little bit of an ego inflation each and every time. So yeah.
And these things are so incredibly hard to build.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, from building the People Zine,
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
know from building this podcast, these
yeah.
things are incredibly hard to build because the ego, like, there is no constant dopamine hit that comes from this. It is
Yeah,
hard.
there
Like,
isn't.
it is
It's not
debilitating.
flashy.
It's not flashy. You're spending all your own money and your own time. Everyone else is out there doing really cool, fun stuff, and you're building shit.
Yeah, yeah.
But these
There
are
aren't
the things that
trophies.
say that no trophies, no thank yous, no. There's a lot of people who are telling you how you're doing it so terribly and how you could do it so much better and why you're bothering and blah, blah, blah.
And the
But
sponsors want to have their names on a banner somewhere.
don't get me started with sponsors and egos. We have been
Oh, we could
so
go.
lucky, right? We are so careful with who we let sponsor this podcast. And people approach us all the time. We want to sponsor the podcast. We want to sponsor the podcast. I'm like, thank you, but our values are not aligned. And I think I told you a story off air of somebody who wanted to do something like that, and they were simply shocked at the idea that we wouldn't take their money. And when I said to them, when our values are not aligned, there's no dimension we will ever work together. There's another form of ego, right? These people who just think that they've got all this money and of course you will want it because I'm offering it to you. No.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But that leads us into what the next episode is going to be about, which is about gatekeeping and transparency, because boy, do I have a story for you guys. Join us. Kat and I are going to be telling some stories through this series. We can't wait for you to join us. Peace, love, and peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day. I really hope you enjoyed this episode, friends. Please don't forget to show us some love by subscribing, liking, commenting, and most of all, sharing this podcast with your friends. Check the show notes for links, including our sponsors and our Patreon. And stay tuned for more great conversations on the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward.